All right, Deep Thread Sports fan, we're back at you here again with another podcast. This is Opposite Field Podcast. We've had some great playoff baseball. We're very excited to continue talking about this because playoff baseball, we can all agree with, gets us really jacked up here. So once again, I'm going to introduce you to Collin and Jordan. Guys, we saw some great playoff baseball. So why don't we go ahead and talk about these wild card series?
Yeah, fellas, I'm looking forward to coming back and doing this again. Playoff baseball is one of the best sports there is. Hell, while we record this, we have the Padres and Dodgers going at it. And we just saw Fernando Tatis lead this game off with a home run for the Padres, so great start for them. But yeah, Marty, you hit the nail on the head, man. These wild card games have been nuts so far, really entertaining. We've seen some great pitching performances. I can't wait to break this stuff down with you guys. Jordan, your bracket looks like shit so far, man. Go ahead and tell us what you got going on.
Yeah, like Collin said, bracket looks like shit, but we got some great baseball going, some surprising stuff going on, some surprising wins, some great pitching all around, and some good hitting. And like he said, Padres started off with a leadoff home run against the Dodgers just a bit ago. And what more could we want to see the Dodgers lose?
Yeah, so I guess we'll start out with the Kansas City and Baltimore series. Man, that was I didn't have that being that low scoring of a series. So the first game, Kansas City won 1-0. Second game, they win 2-1. I can't believe I'm saying this, but the Orioles were only held to one run in that series. What do you guys have to say about that?
Horrible. Looked like they were up there swinging pool noodles and broomsticks. I mean, I think their average was one batted 155. Gunnar Henderson, their leadoff, was 0 for 6, I think, with like 2 Ks or 3 Ks. And their whole series just looked bad. At least Corbin Burns came out out of the gate. I think he threw eight innings, 3 Ks. And I mean, he just didn't get no run support. And what can you do in October if you're not scoring runs and hitting the baseball?
I mean, we kind of talked about it here before this series started and the playoffs really got going. The Orioles really kind of lost it down the stretch, it seemed like. I know Jordan touched on it before the series started and said that the Orioles kind of won a lot of their games at the very end to try to push them in and secure that wild card spot. But yeah, fellas, I think the young team just kind of got to him a little bit. Jordan, you're right. Corbin Burns threw an absolute gem. He gave them every chance to win that first game. He went out there and did his job. That's why they traded for Corbin Burns. He did his thing. Guy's an absolute stud. That was no surprise to us for Corbin Burns to give you an outing like that. It's just really shocking that the Orioles didn't score runs for him. Now, on the flip side of that, the Royals had really good pitching as well, and Cole Reagans and Seth Lugo. I mean, those two guys came to play as well. So Corbin Burns probably overshadowed them on paper, but those two guys get the job done as well for the Royals. I think for the Royals looking down the stretch, they kind of need to get a little bit of help outside of their top 3 to 4 hitters on their team throughout the playoffs because it's really top-loaded and front-loaded for them, and they really are going to need some performances out of their lesser players. And Salvador Perez, you look for him to be kind of the leader of this baseball team. Just he's been around, he's been to the playoffs, he's won a World Series. He needs to kind of grab this team by the shoulders, and it's not over yet. I mean, he needs to express that we won one series. We need to turn the page, focus on down the stretch. But yeah, man, shout out to the Royals. I brought my Royals cup out for this one. Had this cup since 2013. We're going to be Royal, baby. We got them here on this network going a long ways. But the good thing about the Royals that I saw is they weren't trying to do too much in this series. They were just taking good at-bats, working counts. Like Bobby Witt, and I think it was game 2, he legged infield single out to get the go-ahead run across the plate. So these guys are hungry, man. Most of these guys are young, and they're here to win. They're here to make a stance, and they're here to prove something. So Royals looked great, and I'm really proud of what they accomplished. And like I said, Marty and I were big Royals believers here.
Yeah, and I think it always does a lot for your team confidence when you can win those super close games like that. It's always makes you feel good when you're in a rhythm and you kind of have ducks on a pond and you're getting a lot of hits. You can kind of get momentum that way. But when you can win these very, very tough, call with your fingernail games where you're winning 1-0 and 2-1, the fact that you can win that as a young team, I think that gives me a lot of confidence going forward. So also we have the Detroit and Houston series. So Collin, we know how high he is. He's been on the Tigers all season long. I know that you probably have a lot you want to talk about this, but man, they came in as probably one of the hottest teams in the playoffs here, if not the hottest, with the way that they finished up that season. And they end up beating Houston in game 1, 3-1. and then beating them 5-2 in game 2. So, Collin, I know you're excited about this. The Tigers keep rolling, man.
Fellas, you guys know, like Marty said, I've been so high on the Tigers, and we're just going to keep riding that train. I'll be honest, man, I didn't see them coming in and sweeping in Houston at Houston. That was kind of a shock to me. I did have the Tigers obviously advancing, but a sweep, I didn't see that coming. But I think what's kind of crazy here, too, is Yordan Alvarez comes into this series playing with a banged up, I think it was a knee or an ankle injury he's kind of got going on. Not looking the part for Yordan Alvarez. The Astros offense didn't really look the part. I mean, you got guys like Jose Altuve, Kyle Tucker, Yordan Alvarez, Bregman. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, we're just touching the tip of the iceberg with the Astros right there. And you see a guy like Tariq Skubal, who we love on this network, come out, absolutely shove game one, make a statement, make a stance, let them know, hey, shove it up your ass. I'm coming right at you every single pitch. I'm looking to get out. What a leader by Tariq Skubal. I am concerned about the Tigers pitching staff moving down the stretch throughout the playoffs because the Tigers used 7 pitchers in game 2. Not really great on the stat sheets for them in that sense, but hey, win's a win. They get out of this series, sweep them, kick the Astros' ass, and we absolutely love to see that. The Tigers find ways to generate runs. The Royals and Tigers, to me, are very similar baseball teams. Have some great pitching, find ways to generate runs, whether it's small ball, bunting guys over, stealing bags. They do what they need to do to generate runs and win baseball games. Both teams pretty young. Hey, I love the Tigers as well. Tigers advance, baby. Let's see what they do from here.
Yeah, so one thing I've seen about the Tigers is it seems like when they get runners in scoring position, they do a lot of small ball. They hit base hits, they sack fly, they bunt runners over. And when you talk about a team like the Astros, they're going for the long ball. They're not hitting, they live or die by the long ball. And if they're not hitting that, they're pretty well up Schitt's Creek without a paddle. Because like Tariq Skubal came in and just like we said, threw a gym and shut them down. And when you get down by a game in the wild card series, you better hold on because you better start winning and hitting some baseballs because, like, I mean, they just didn't. This, I guess, the second game, did they come back in like the 7th inning or something, take the lead, and then I think the Tigers went up, scored 4 runs, and just beat them 5-2 the game 2, and it was just good to see and nothing better than October baseball without the Astros.
Well, I remember talking to you guys because you're right, Jordan. When the Astros come in the bottom of the 7th, take a 2-1 lead, I remember talking to you guys, and I was like, if the Tigers don't come back right here, I feel like the Tigers probably just blew this series. That was one of those moments where you have that hunch inside you where you're just like, man, I think they just lost it all right there. That was a gut punch. I don't know how they respond. They're a young team. How do they rally back? And, man, they shocked me by coming right back in the top of the 8th, scoring 4. And talk about taking wind out of the sails. They did the exact same thing to the Astros right there. They absolutely deflated them. That was the end. You knew that was kind of the dagger. The Astros are probably still in shock to this day. But, man, we love it. And, yeah, man, Tariq Skubal, he's going to be my player of the Astros-Tigers series. This guy's an absolute dog. I look for him to try to shut out teams moving forward throughout the playoffs. The Tigers have to win games that Tariq Skubal pitches in the playoffs. We've made that clear here. And Jordan, he just talked about it again, too. The small ball aspect. We talked about that before the playoffs started for a couple of these teams. Go back to old school baseball, bunt runners over, steal bags, do what you have to do to win baseball games, and they did exactly that. And, yeah, man, the rest is history. Go Tigers.
Yeah, it's funny. I would normally say that, you only score 3 runs in a series. In a wild card series, it normally doesn't bode well for you, but that's exactly what Kansas City did and swept the Orioles. But, yeah, it was nice to see. I'll be kind of honest. I'm not the biggest Houston fan in the world, and I know that they've been pretty competitive in the playoffs the last many handfuls of years. I can't remember how many years it goes back, but it's quite a few. It's quite impressive that they've at least advanced in the playoffs. So right now we're going to go ahead.
Oh, well, sorry, Marty, real quick, I think I don't remember how many years it was or what the exact stat was, but
I think.
But the Astros have been in the ALCS for maybe 5, 6, 7 years straight or something crazy. So absolute incredible performance for the Tigers to overcome a feat that most teams haven't recently. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Going forward, we have our New York Mets and Brewers series. So game 1 was 8-4 Mets. Game 2 was 5-3 Brewers. Game 3 was 4-2 Mets, with the Mets coming away with this one. Did anybody surprise you, or what things stuck out to you guys in this series here?
One thing that I stuck out to me was Jackson Churio and Bryce Turang. They came out with the 1-2 punch, and I mean they batted 455, and Jackson hit 2 home runs and drove in a few runners, and I mean it just I guess their pitching just wasn't there, and the Mets capitalized whenever they could, and Jose Iglesias had a hell of a series against them.
Well, Jordan, as you talk about Jackson Churio and Bryce Turang here, the Brewers never got Willie Adames or William Contreras going, brother of Wilson Contreras from the Cardinals. But yeah, William Contreras and Willie Adames never got going. And for the Brewers to be successful, they're going to have those two guys go, and they didn't. And that's kind of why you saw them kind of fall short. It looked like the Brewers might squeak Game 3 out as well. But then you kind of see a guy that I'm not a fan of at all come up, Pete Alonso, smack a go-ahead 3-run bomb for the Mets to take the lead, and the Brewers never just came back. It was kind of too late at that point. The Mets took this thing over, and they just never looked back. I really thought the Brewers probably would squeak this one out. I mean, I made the comment on our last episode that I think Mets or Braves, either one that the Brewers play or that the Padres play. I thought neither one of those wild card teams coming in at the last stretch had a chance. And the Mets, man, they surprised me. I think they surprised a lot of people. The Mets come in extremely hot. They are scorching hot, that is, actually. And they could be a problem moving forward. This Mets team has all the works to be a good baseball team throughout the stretch of the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, I want to have a little shout out here for Starling Marte. Is a player that I always enjoyed watching, and I'm just looking up his stats real quick. He batted for 333, so I'm always it's always a joy to see some of the players that you remember in the league that I always kind of keep an eye on. Good for them.
You know what goes super unnoticed in this? Jose Quintana. Jose Quintana comes in and throws 6 innings of scoreless baseball and allows 4 hits to the Brewers lineup. And that's impressive, man. Jose Quintana been around for a minute, and if you lead on him in Game 3, to be honest, you probably don't feel too comfortable. I mean, I know I wouldn't have, and he comes out and gives you everything you need for the Mets to go win this baseball game. So hats off to him. Hats off to the Mets. I'll be honest, I hope they don't make it much further because I'm not a Mets fan. But, hey, man, as long as they keep playing good, entertaining baseball, I'm on board.
The next series we have there is Atlanta versus San Diego. So Game 1, we have 4-0 Padres. Game 2, we have a more competitive game there. We have 5-4 Padres. So San Diego takes this series in 2 games. What stuck out to you guys in this series?
Yeah, so Game 1, Michael King came out and just slammed the door right on the Braves' face. He went 7 innings, 12 Ks. He had a .71 whip and a 192 batting average against. And when you see that Game 1, you're pretty well thinking, oh shit, here we go. It's October and we got to bear down. Other guy is Fernando Tatis Jr. He came out and he batted .667. He hit a home run, and whenever he's just driving in runs, and then you got Manny Machado, Jerks, and Profar, and I mean, just a hell of a lineup to go against, especially when you get down 4 runs in a baseball game. It's just tough to come back from, especially against them guys.
Well, yeah, like you said, Jordan, I mean, Fernando Tatis getting it going in this series, the team can really kind of ride on his shoulders. I mean, the Padres are star-studded, they're loaded, so I'm not saying that's all that they have. But I feel like Fernando Tatis is kind of the energy guy. When he gets it going, I feel like the team gets it going. And that's why you see the Padres come in and sweep this one. They scored 9 runs in 2 games. They jump out to an early lead in both these games. I know that the Braves took a 1-0 lead in the first inning. But you see the Padres come right back in Game 2 in the second inning and score 5 in the bottom of the second. Punch the Braves right back in the mouth, and it really knocked them back on their heels. And looked like it kind of sucked the life out of the Braves as well. They are super injury prone right now. They're missing a lot of their studs. So, I mean, it makes it really tough for a Braves team to make a push back in a series like this. And credit to them, man. Hats off. They made it a game, 5-4 in that second one. They showed some heart. They fought. Michael Harris did everything that he could to keep this Braves team in it. Chris Sale not pitching for them was an absolute killer. You need Chris Sale to kind of pitch in this Game 1 or Game 2 to probably get you one. And to be honest, man, if Chris Sale pitched in Game 1 or 2, they might have got one, especially Game 2. I mean, like you said, Jordan, Michael King absolutely shoved in Game 1, so it's tough to compete with that. But if Chris Sale could have came back and went Game 2 instead of Max Fried, who got absolutely rocked for 5 runs, I mean, it's a totally different series in my opinion, probably. But yeah, the Padres look great. The Padres are hot. The Padres have this thing rolling in the right direction. They have since the All-Star break. Hats off to the Padres. Look for them to make some noise and rattle the cages against the Dodgers. Let's go Padres, baby.
Yeah, Colin, like you said about the Michael Harris deal, he came out, I think, bottom of the eighth or top of the eighth inning. He came out and hit a 2-run home run to make it a 5-4 baseball game and put him right back in it. And they held on. And I mean, here we are in the ALDS now with them. So we'll see what happens.
All right, Collin, in the Detroit-Houston series there, obviously Detroit sweeps them 2-0. But why don't you go ahead and give me the player of the series there for you?
Yeah, Marty, my player of the series in this Tigers-Astros series is Tariq Skubal. I know you guys probably saw that coming. I love Tariq Skubal.
Shocker.
Him. Yeah, I've talked about him over and over and over, and he's my Cy Young guy before the season even started. So I'm going to tip the cap to him. Tariq Skubal comes in this game, absolutely dices, gives them 6 innings of 4-hit baseball, not allowing a run. I mean, Tariq Skubal did this thing, man. Like we talked about, he has to shove. They have to win the games that he pitches. And he did exactly that. He gave the Tigers a chance. He gave the Tigers more momentum in this first game, showed them that they could actually go into Houston and win this series. What a great performance by him in game 1 of that wild card series. That was absolutely brilliant, and they needed that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when you have a pitcher like that, it just gives you just immense confidence going forward into a game, knowing that you got a guy in the bump that's going to be competing every inning. I think it just really helps your momentum there. So out of the Kansas City Orioles.
Well, what's crazy, real quick, Marty, what's crazy,
Sure.
one thing I want to say about Skubal again is you kind of see him, I think it was the 6th inning, I think it was his last inning, kind of gets a few runners on. Looks like he may have hurt something at one point. The trainer comes out, they're talking to him. I remember talking to both you guys at that same time, like, holy shit, this is the end of the Tigers if he goes out. Hey, he looks at the trainer and says, I'm fine, man. Give me the ball. I'm going to throw 2 warm-up pitches right here real quick, and I'm going to get it back, and I'm going to get us out of this inning. You're not taking my ass out of this game. I'm going to stay right here, and did exactly that. I love that shit.
Absolutely. I completely agree. So out of the Kansas City Baltimore series there, Jordan, who would you pick for your player of the series there?
My player of the series is going to be Cole Reagans. He came out and he threw 6 innings of eight strikeout baseball. He let up 4 hits and he held them to 182 batting average and just was very, very good. But I will have to honorable mention Corbin Burns here against Cole Reagans. He threw 8 innings with 3 Ks. He let up 5 hits and he had a 192 batting average against. And if you would have told me going into game 1 there was going to be 4 runs scored in that series against the Orioles and Royals, I'd have lost a lot of money betting against you because I just didn't think there was no way in hell that they were only going to score that many runs in 2 games.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. When the winning team of the series only scores 3 runs, it's hard to give that title to as somebody up at bat there. You have to almost give that to somebody on the bump. Absolutely. So that brings us to the New York Mets series there. Obviously, New York takes that 2-1. So, Collin, I'm going to go back to you here. Well, who do you give player of the series in that series? We had a little bit more action in this series to kind of see some both sides of both teams there and what they kind of had there. Who do you have?
You know, I want to first hit the cap to Bryce Terang coming in. He goes 5 for 11, bats 455. That's impressive. But what I'm going to give my player of the series to is Jackson Chourio. I know the Brewers lost, but I feel like both these guys looking back stood out to me the most. Jackson Chourio also goes 5 for 11, bats 455, but he knocks 2 home runs. This guy's a rookie. Absolute incredible performance by him. First postseason. Guy's an absolute stud. Difference maker moving forward. You kind of saw him get hot down the stretch and become almost the centerpiece of this Milwaukee Brewers offense. I know, like I said, they lost the series, but I'm going to give credit where it's due. And Jackson Chourio, he's by far and away my player of the series.
And Jordan, so San Diego beats Atlanta 2-0 here. Who would you give your player of the series there?
Game 1, Padres beat them 4-0, and there's one reason for that. It's a guy on the bump, Michael King. He came out and he threw 7 innings with 12 Ks, .71 whip, and a 192 batting average against. And that is just a good performance on the bump. And he's the big reason that they are where they are right now against LA and the ALDS.
Yeah, I think what the postseason kind of picture here is thus far, and this isn't going to be a surprise to anybody, is that we're talking about a lot of pitchers here. And I think that we can talk about how pitching's king until we're blue in the face. I'm going to go with just one player here, one player that I've enjoyed watching probably since the end of the season here, or really the entire season, to be completely honest with you. And I'm going to agree with Collin on this one, and that is Skubal. You look at that guy, and I just love. We're St. Louis locals here, so it's hard. We haven't had a good shutdown pitcher here in St. Louis, a good solid ace in quite some time. So when I watch these games and I see a great shutdown, a great ace, a great pitcher, a pitcher with good arsenal, a pitcher that has more than one or two good pitches, it makes me quite jealous. But sometimes you forget just how big of a difference a good shutdown pitcher makes, especially in the playoffs. Kind of reminds me of the Carpenter days here in St. Louis, where you had somebody who was going to go out there and grind and just sit there and claw at their fingernails for everything that they had. We haven't been able to see that in a while. So I'm going to go with Skubal as well. I love watching that guy throw. I think he's just been spectacular. Anything else that you guys want to throw in these series here before we move on?
Well, why we talk about Tariq Skubal again? You know, I can talk about him all day. Is there a question back at you for you guys? Is there any player more important to their team in the playoffs than him? Because you give that guy the ball, you have utter confidence, the utmost confidence that he's going to go out and get you a win. When you give him the baseball and you know he's your starter that day, it's almost like the Tigers have a fire under their ass. Like, hey, I want to go win for this guy. You see him every time he strikes somebody out, he's got tons of emotion. Let's say he gets out of a jam, you see him kind of flex, pump his chest, start screaming at the opposing team's dugout. That's the shit I like. That's the fire I like, and that's how you get a team motivated behind you, especially in the playoffs, especially a young baseball team. When you have younger guys out there seeing you leave it all out there on the bump for their team, they want to get into the dugout and they want to go light the baseball on fire at the plate for you. I love it. I love the pick, Marty. I feel like he is the most important player to all the teams in the playoffs. Without him, the Tigers are not being discussed at all.
I agree. I agree completely. We're going to move on to our ALDS series here, and we're going to start with the Cleveland Detroit series. We only have one game played here, obviously, but right now, this is no surprise to me. The Guardians are up 1-0. Anything that sticks out with you guys in game one of this series?
Well, the Tigers had absolutely no offense. 0 runs. I think they had 4 total hits. It was absolutely a piss poor performance. Just talking about how great they are. Coming right back at it. Absolutely piss poor performance by them. And hey, one thing I'm going to note, Skubal wasn't on the bump at least. The Tigers come out with an opener, and he gets absolutely rocked for 4 earned runs. What are we doing? This is the playoff. What are we doing? I hate the opener shit. Never been a fan of that. Cleveland Guardians come out and absolutely light it on fire. Lane Thomas, 3-run bomb for the Guardians. Kind of a guy that we probably weren't going to think too much about. I am a Lane Thomas fan. I talked about it on here before. I took Lane Thomas season total over home runs before the season started, and he's really been on fire since coming back from injury and getting traded to the Guardians, but not the guy that I would have talked about first for the Cleveland Guardians. I mean, Jose Ramirez in this game, if I remember correctly, I think Jose Ramirez went like 1 for 3 or 1 for 4 with the walk or 1 for 3 with the walk or something like that. So he didn't go out there and really light it up like we kind of thought he would. I mean, he did enough, and they won 7-0. But yeah, man, Cleveland Guardians were a totally different baseball team, absolutely filling the scoreboards up, dominated this game from start to finish, never gave the Tigers any hope. So hopefully moving forward, I'm on the Tigers, making it to the ALCS, as crazy as that sounds. So hopefully the Tigers kind of come back in game 2. I think we do have Skubal on the bump. So look for the Tigers trying to get right in that baseball game.
Yeah, like first game, it was everything Guardians, and it was just an ass beating is what it was. And I'd kind of like to see that with the Guardians. I think it's pretty cool. The Naylor brothers, I think that's really neat to see them. Hopefully they ain't gonna win next game because Scubal's on the bump, but I'd like to see them make a little push for it.
Well, if the Guardians do come out and they do beat the Tigers in game 2, the Tigers can probably mail this one in. I'll be honest. I mean, you go down 2-0, you lose the best pitcher in base, you lose the game with the best pitcher in baseball on the bump. You're probably going to go ahead and chalk it up. But man, I really do think he comes out. Tariq Skubal, that is, comes out and shoves, and I think he knows he has to shove. So probably a little bit of added pressure there. But yeah, fellas, I really do think the Guardians are a force to be reckoned with. And we talked about it here a little bit. Some of these 1 seeds and 2 seeds sitting around on a bye in that first round of the playoffs, maybe coming out a little bit flat. And boy, oh boy, did the Guardians do the opposite of that.
Absolutely. Moving on, we have a series that we talked about here pretty much in detail amongst each other here, and that is the Kansas City and New York Yankees series. So Kansas City loses this first game, and boy, we talked about this at length amongst ourselves when we saw each other last week about how if Kansas City could go out and find a way to win game one and kind of really get ahead in this series, it would be tremendous. And unfortunately, what we saw is really a team that kind of snatched defeat out of the jaws of victory. And I can't believe I'm saying this because I was bragging on them so much. But this is exactly what you cannot have happen, in my opinion, if you want to beat a team like the Yankees. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you guys. I know this is a tough one here, but what, I mean, we're going to be kind of obvious here, kind of blatant here, but what are some of the things you saw in this series so far in this game one, and moving forward, what do we have to have the Royals do to try to turn this around?
Well, first, I'll talk about this was an awesome game to watch. These teams are back and forth, trading punches. I know we want to dog on the Yankees as much as we can, but I'm going to give credit where it's due. I always say that. I mean, this was a fun, exciting baseball game. This is what makes playoff baseball awesome. And these teams just kept going back and forth. One team would take a lead, they'd come back, and they would just fire right back and forth at each other. What's crazy, too, is the Yankees, Judge goes 0 for 4 in this one, and the Yankees still win. But let's not forget, they got a guy like Juan Soto who can kind of take over a baseball game whenever the other best player on the team doesn't show up for it. Gleyber Torres also went yard in this game. So absolute good performance by the Yankees offensively. I didn't think Garrett Cole looked unhittable. I thought the Royals probably could have got to him a little more than what they did. But like you said, Marty, if the Royals would have snuck out game one with Michael Wacha on the bump, because the way it's set up with Seth Lugo and Cole Reagans being out game one of this one due to the last series, if they could have snuck it out with Michael Wacha, the Royals would have been absolutely off to the races. Bobby Witt and Vinny Pasquantino have to be better next game. They went 0 for 10 combined in this one. That is awful. You cannot have that out of your two best players. And real quick, one last thing I want to talk about. If we're going to review plays, let's get them right. Jazz Chisholm steals second base. He's hosed, out. They review it. They still get the call wrong. That's pitiful. If you're going to review it, get it right. Don't leave up any discussion where you can talk about home cook and any kind of shit like that. Get the call right. That's horrible, especially in the playoffs.
Yeah, Collin, like you said about game one with Michael Wacha, I feel like that is a must win for the Royals to have any chance at this series. I mean, there's still a chance, but they just dug themselves a hole. Now they're going to have to climb back out of. But because, I mean, like you said, Seth Lugo and Cole Reagans are coming back. But Yankees really didn't impress me much. Like, I mean, they won, but they just nothing. They didn't look special, nothing about them. Like Collin said, 0 for 4, Aaron Judge, and that's what I like to see because I'm not a big Judge guy. And yeah, that the whole series is going to be pretty exciting to watch. I feel like the next two are very winnable with Seth Lugo and Cole Reagans coming back, and can't wait to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on, we have the New York Mets versus Phillies here. This series is tied 1-1. I've really enjoyed watching this series so far. What have you guys noticed at 6 out with you 2 games into this series?
But as we started a little bit ago, we just seen the ending of game 2, and man, what a baseball game that was. Nick Castellanos with the walk-off single, and that's what October is about. I'd like to see this Philly team make a run, and I think they're very good and they're very capable of it. And Mr. October, Bryce Harper, showed us what he does in October the best here. He homered earlier, and I think we got a lot to look forward to in this series. And I just hope Pete Alonso keeps struggling. I know he had a home run tonight, but he's only batting about 150 this October, and nothing better than seeing Pete Alonso strike out.
One thing I want to talk about that's going to go unrecognized, I think, most of the playoffs. Zach Wheeler absolutely dominated the Mets the first 7 innings of this baseball game. He absolutely dominated them. I don't know if you guys get to tune into Zach Wheeler's performance, but it was electric. He comes out in the 8th, or doesn't come back out to start the 8th. And the Mets, you can kind of tell, even the announcers talked about it. when the starting pitcher is absolutely lighting the other team up like that and he comes out of the game, it's almost like it lights a fire or gives the opposing team maybe some momentum because they're like, thank God, man, we can finally go to the plate and breathe and see some pitches and maybe work in a bat because Zach Wheeler had the Mets number. The Mets do exactly what they should do. When he comes out, they light up the bullpen, won the baseball game. Hats off to them. Great job by the Mets in that one. The Phillies offense sat around and kind of got a little bit cold. It took them a little while to get things going. And once they did, we just saw it in game 2 where they go down, they come back. They go down, they come back. And like you said, Jordan, Bryce Harper gets this thing going. Nick Castellanos, a hell of a baseball game here, fellas. The Phillies don't win this game without Nick Castellanos. This was one of the most entertaining games I've watched in a long time. Matt Vientos has 3 extra base hits in this game. Game 2, that is, 2 home runs. This guy's an absolute star in the making right here in the postseason. And pay attention to it, witness it, because this guy's lighting it up. He's trying to put the team on his back, march them through the playoffs. Hats off to him as well. Game 2 was an absolute banger. I hope the rest of the series is like this. I do enjoy seeing some high-scoring baseball games in the playoffs. Like you talked about, Marty, most of the time throughout the postseason. We talked about it here before the playoffs even started, too. It's kind of a pitcher's duel. I mean, you're going to see a lot of really good pitching, probably some low-scoring baseball games. But anytime we can get a series like this where these teams come out and they attack the pitching and attack the bullpens, that's awesome stuff. One thing I want to note is, I know, Jordan, I know you kind of follow the Phillies pretty heavy. What did you think about Alec Baum getting benched in this one for Edmundo Sosa? I mean, if I recall, Edmundo Sosa didn't do much for the St. Louis Cardinals back then, and I know Baum wasn't great down the stretch in the month of September and in this postseason so far, but I thought this was a really interesting move by the Phillies manager.
Yeah, I seen that because the start of the game I was watching and I cut off for a little bit, but I seen Alec Baum was in then, and I don't know, man. I'm big on Alec Baum, and then I'm big on Bryson Stott too. And Alec's been struggling, man. He's been struggling late. He struggled at the end of the regular season too, and just that's one bat that they need to get going if they want to make a pretty big push.
Well, what's crazy to me, though, is, I mean, you look at Edmundo Sosa's numbers, and his numbers weren't that much better. I mean, they were very, very similar down the stretch. I don't know if they were just trying to change something up, get a little something else going, but I feel like Alec Baum is a very important part of this baseball team, especially in the postseason. I mean, if I remember correctly, he was an all-star this season. So I feel like that's something that they have to get going. I did see in the game that they pulled out Edmundo Sosa after he went 0 for 2 and then put Alec Baum in. So, I mean, maybe the experiment's over already. It was short-lived, but hey, they won the baseball game. Nobody's going to talk about that shit besides us. Series is tied 1-1, and we have a lot of exciting baseball games left throughout this series. Also, this is another game. Trey Turner was out on the pickoff. They reviewed it, called him safe. Another missed call. When we review it, let's get it right. Otherwise, just don't review the damn thing.
I completely agree. You know, if professional sports are always moving to review we always sit there and complain, in this day and age, we need to get every call right, especially in the postseason. And here we are. We have 2 instances where, in my opinion, it's pretty clear that they just really screwed up here. And if you're going to take the time to look at these things and then you're going to show the replay 18 times on national TV, can we please, for the love of everything holy, get this thing right? It makes it's insulting.
If the announcers are talking about it on TV while you're reviewing it and then you still review it and get it wrong, that's so bad. That's so bad. That leaves nothing but questions for the fans. And all fans talk about and all you hear about in the offseason is how they want to speed up the game of baseball. Let's speed it up. Put a pitch clock. Let's speed it up. So then you review it. You spend time reviewing it, wasting people's time just to come back and get the call wrong again. That's horrible. That's horrible. That can't happen, especially in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think moving forward, we're looking at a point where eventually we're going to get to a point where we're going to have kind of a, I don't know what the right word to be, but we're going to come to a point where we're going to have to make a decision on whether or not we're going to continue to use umpires and stuff behind home plate. And I hate that. I hate that we get to a point in society where we're always getting rid of somebody's job and we're giving it to something electronic. We could talk about that on a different podcast about a different time, but it drives me nuts. We're getting to a point to where eventually we're going to have AI that's going to be doing all this crap for us. And I don't like that. I like the purity in the game, but I like sitting there. I like bragging in sports about how good the officiating is if you have a league that's officiated well. And I think that once you get in these scenarios where officiating starts becoming a topic of conversation, it's not good. And I do not think it looks good for your sport. I think it is important to be squared away, to have the best athletes, to have the athletes that are working hard. They're genetic specimens. They are everything about the sports are getting faster, stronger, and officiating needs to keep up. It's a part of the sport. It's a part of the purity of the sport. And eventually, if we don't get in a scenario where officiating in certain sports cuts the mustard anymore, we're going to be getting rid of those jobs.
Well, baseball is one of the longest sports in history, and we've had umpires behind the plate. That's just part of the game, man. I don't think the balls and strikes call are as I can't say not as important because they are, but I don't feel like they're as important as the calls on the field when you're going bag to bag or the play at the plate. Man, you're gonna miss some calls behind the plate. Being a home plate umpire is probably one of the hardest, I guess, officiating jobs you could have in all of sports. I mean, you can't even really see the plate in front of the catcher, so you're just doing your best to kind of to track the ball in like a hitter almost, and try to get the call right. Now, obviously, there are some umpires out there that are way worse than others. But yeah, man, I think that's just part of it. It's kind of strategy. If you're starting pitcher, hell, I pitched my whole entire life. If I knew an umpire and I knew he liked the outside, well, hey, I'm going to live on the outside all game long. That's just part of it. That's doing your homework. That's being a good athlete. That's just performing well. And if you can hit the spots, reward the pitcher, man. If you can consistently put it where you want to put it, you're doing your job. And yeah, Marty, I'm with you. I don't ever want to see the umpires go away. I think that would ruin the sport of baseball.
Hey, I will say that at least there ain't no Angel Hernandez robot out there, because we'd be in trouble if there was.
Well, hey, he was the one I was talking about. I wasn't just going to call him out like that. That dude's dog shit. Let's just leave it at that.
Well, we know that the people that watch this podcast, they know what area we're from and what team we root for here. So we can't talk about terrible calls during the playoffs without bringing up the infield fly rule.
Good God. Literally the
one of the worst calls
in baseball history, probably.
I've never seen it. I've never seen anything like it. I go back and I watch it probably every 6 months to a year. I have to go back and just bring it.
That game was at the Chop House. That game was at the Chop House, and they still get it wrong. That ball was 45 feet into left field, and they call an infield fly. Hey, hats off, baby. Cardinals, hey, we got to take the wins where we can get them, because we don't get those too much anymore. We'll probably watch that game a few times throughout this postseason just to get the blood flowing a little bit.
The funny thing about that play is when you go back and you watch, I think it was Matt Holliday and Pete Cosma were both going for this ball. The look of defeat on their face of knowing that was a ball that they needed to get to, and then the baseball gods step right in and just give us a golden horseshoe. I just still go back and watch it and think, my God, what horrible officiating. So
that was arguably the worst call in baseball history, probably.
Yep. So moving forward here, we have the Los Angeles Dodgers versus San Diego Padres. So just to kind of give you a little bit of an idea of what's going on right now, that game is actually, as of recording, that game is currently going on. Game 2 is right now. And last time I checked, Padres are leading 3-1, I think, in the bottom of the fourth.
Yeah, they're up 3-1. We see the Tatis home run. We saw Mookie Betts hit a home run. We were actually just kicking this on live, and I was like, I'm pretty sure I just saw a little bit of fan interference when Jurickson Profar made a hell of a robbery in left field, and the fan took it out of his glove. And then we looked up, and the run was gone off the board. So I'm assuming they made that call and got it right, that the fan probably interfered a little bit. But while we are talking about reviewing plays and getting them wrong, Freddie Freeman's playing hurt in this series, usually going to miss about 4 to 6 weeks with the kind of ankle injury that he has. But Freddie Freeman steals second base, is hosed at second base, comes off the bag, once again, called safe, review it, called safe. Awful. Awful. That was in game 1, not right now in game 2. That was in game 1. That's horrible. But hey, we're turning the page off that, I guess, a little bit. We've harped on that enough. Ohtani's first postseason game, 3-run home run. Not surprised by that one. This guy is, there's no words that really describe Shohei Ohtani. I'm going to be honest with you. He was worth every penny. Yeah, there's no words in the dictionary that work for him. I mean, this guy is a do-it-all type player. We've never seen anything like it before. At least I haven't. So, yeah, man, the Padres series is what we're calling it. Padres, Dodgers. We're going to call it the Padres series here. And I really hope that Tatis and Manny Machado, I hope the team rallies around the Padres and they get it going. Notable thing here, Clayton Kershaw is out for the remainder of the season, so he's not going to touch the bump in this one for the Dodgers. But yeah, man, go Padres. I'm all in on the Padres. I can't stand the Dodgers. We'll cover the Dodgers like we're supposed to, even though we don't like them. and they're a good baseball team. But I'm all in for the Padres here.
So, Colin, can I ask you something? If you're a Padres pitching coach, do you pitch to Ohtani or do you walk him every time?
God, man, it's so
Man.
hard because, walking. I'm
That's
serious.
what I'm saying, dude. I'm one of the
serious.
biggest anti-Ohtani guys, and at this point, walk him. I mean, if he's just gonna go up there and tomahawk home runs out, you might as well just try to walk the dude.
Did you guys see the home run he hit? It was like borderline out of the
neck.
top of the strike zone. I mean, it was probably a
Yeah.
ball, and he absolutely just shits on it. And he threw the bat, so tons of emotion. I do like seeing that. He's happy to be there. He's happy to finally play in his first postseason game. This is awesome. All things good for Shohei Ohtani. I mean, I will cheer for him. It's just a shame he's on the Dodgers.
Yeah, so I don't want to get too far off topic here, but I want to ask you guys a very specific question. The game has changed when it comes to pimping home runs. You know, you got people hitting home runs and like crip walking to first. You know, you got people out there with their ice dangling off their neck, you know, doing, you know, the Jesus Cross bat flip. Back in the day, man, that would get your beamed and your ass whooped. So what do you guys feel about the pimping the home runs thing? Because I kind of go back and forth on it myself.
See, I love a bat flip. There's a bat flip. That's what gets me fired up. Like I know Tatis is bad about it. Tatis will hit one and he'll shit on it and he'll just look at the dugout and he'll launch it. He don't know where it's going. He's just gonna launch it.
I love it, man. I love it. I've said it before on earlier. I was a pitcher, and if somebody hits a home run off you, man, you just didn't make a pitch. And even if you did make a pitch, they just beat you. You don't like it? Don't make a bad pitch. I love it. I love showing emotion. I love showing heart. I love getting your team fired up in the dugout. I think it's awesome. I think it's awesome if a pitcher does it. A pitcher gets out of a jam. Let's say there's bases loaded, 2 outs in the bottom of the ninth, and you get out of a jam, or hell, the bottom of the eighth, whatever inning it is, and you get out and you do your job and you celebrate, beat the chest like we talked about earlier with Tariq Skubal. Man, show some heart, show some emotion. I know you have old school baseball fans that don't like that, but this can't be an emotionless sport. It's 162 games in the regular season. These guys don't see their families. These guys sacrifice a lot. They're working 24/7 to get better at their craft. Man, show some heart. No, who are we to sit here at home and say you can't go celebrate when you do something good? I mean, that's the most absurd thing I've ever heard. Every other sport you can celebrate. You score a goal in soccer, they backflip and do all kinds of shit. You score a goal in hockey, you know, they're dapping up the whole entire team coming down the boards. You score a touchdown in football, they're grittying down the end zone. I mean, dude, I love that shit. Show some heart. This is your life. This is your career. We may not get fired up to go into work and slap hands at work, but these guys do some fun shit, man. So let it be. They're on TV.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Jordan.
One thing else I want to talk about with this series is Joe Musgrove needs Tommy John, and that's
not good for the Padres.
That's right.
That's a big loss for the Padres. Big arm in the rotation. Probably arguably their number 2 guy. I'm not sure where he sits right now, but that's a big loss, and I think you're going to see it come into play.
That's a huge loss, man. Especially when you play a team like the Dodgers. You're going to need your horses out there on the bump as the Padres to go get the job done. You need a guy like Michael King to step up again. You need Yu Darvish to go back to his old self and get things right. That's a huge, huge loss for the Padres.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to go ahead and go over our picks that we made here last week on this show. We're going to start here with Jordan. Jordan, his picks are doing okay. He kind of got off to a little bit of a rough start here because we're going to go ahead and go with the ALCS. You had the Guardians versus the Orioles, and you had the Orioles a winner there. And then for the NLCS, you had the Brewers versus Padres. You got the Padres a winner there. In the World Series, you have Padres versus Orioles. Padres winner. Jordan, how do you feel going forward? Do you think you have a way out of this one?
No. Actually, if the Padres lose this series, I am super screwed. My only hope now is the Padres. And don't tell me it looks okay, Marty, because you know it looks like shit.
Hey, I'm just trying to be nice. I mean, we can't just mail it all in, be like 1 week later, just be like, all right, Jordan, we're not talking about you anymore. We're just going to throw all that shit to the side.
Yeah, no, I'm in a bad spot with my picks, but hey, go Padres, baby. You got the main one still alive.
You got to ride with them now, baby.
Well, it's going to be tough without Joe Musgrove, like you just talked about. But hey, they can still get the job done. And you're in a gutter, son. There ain't no doubt about that. I ain't going to sugarcoat it. Your picks have been awful so far. And let's see if you can get right with the Padres.
All right, Collin. So for your ALCS, you have Royals versus Tigers. You have Tigers winner. For your NLCS, you have Phillies versus Padres. Phillies winner. And then for your World Series, you have a Phillies winner. How you still feeling about that?
Well, my picks look better than Jordan's right now. But to be honest with you, moving forward, I may lose all four of these. In all seriousness, Tigers got absolutely rocked. The Royals are probably not a better team than the Yankees. The Phillies did lose game one to the Mets, which I think hurt because you had Wheeler on the bump, so you kind of needed that one. But they got right in game two, battled back, scratched, clawed, won the game. You kind of saw their bats come alive. They look like they might be turning the page, coming off that bye, getting things going again, finding a rhythm. But the Padres, yeah, I'm with Jordan on this one. We need big things out of guys that probably weren't expecting to do the biggest of things because of a guy like Joe Musgrove. But moving forward, they got to get it right. So I feel okay. I'm really, really worried about the Tigers. I'll be honest with you. If the Tigers don't win game two with Tariq Skubal on the bump, like we said earlier, mail it in, they are done. And then that eliminates my ALCS team. So I need the Tigers and Tariq Skubal to really find it in game two against the Guardians and slow that offense down and punch them in the mouth.
Yeah, from the outside looking in, or if you look at my picks from the surface, it looks like I'm doing kind of okay here, but I'm actually extremely concerned because I have the ALCS, I have Royals versus Guardians, I have a Royals winner. Then NLCS, I have Dodgers versus Phillies, and I have a Dodgers winner with a World Series going to the Royals. So I'm just extremely concerned that the Royals losing that winnable game against the New York Yankees, I think might come back to bite me a little bit here. I need that team to perform. I feel like if they do beat the Yankees, I feel like they are really in a good position to make it to the World Series. However, I have this sneaking suspicion like I might be haunted by that first game loss. It is very concerning. So we'll see what happens there. Before we start to kind of taper this off and start to end this here, give me something that you guys are looking forward to this week in baseball, something that you're keeping your eye on, one thing in particular.
One thing in particular I'm looking at, man, that's tough. I would say none of these teams can lose game two. I'll be honest. I think if the Dodgers win tonight and the Yankees beat the Royals, is it tomorrow? And then then the Guardians beat Skubal and the Tigers. I think them three teams win. I think the Dodgers will beat the Padres if they get ahead 2-0. I think the Guardians will beat the Tigers if they get ahead. That's my thing I'm going to watch is hopefully none of them go up 2-0. That's the main thing. Hopefully it's 1-1 so we see some good baseball. But, man, dude, against them teams, if you get down 2-0, you are up, like I said earlier, up Schitt's Creek without a paddle.
No, I think that's pretty. I would agree 100%. I think that's pretty good. If you go down 2-0 to those type of teams and you're the lesser opponent, you're buried. There's no coming back from that. Like we talked about many a times now, especially the Tigers. They just can't dig out of that hole. They're not good enough offensively. There's just no way. I mean, I'd put it at like a 5% chance that any of those teams bounce back. One thing I'm looking for the rest of this DS series is kind of similar to that. Is how did the Royals come back and respond in New York against the Yankees baseball team that it almost feels like the whole world's rooting for against you as the Kansas City Royals? All you hear is Aaron Judge, Garrett Cole. All you hear is these names. So I'm really anxious to see how the Royals respond to something like that in a tough environment where you feel like the whole world's against you.
Yeah, and I just want to preface this. I'm always going to be a little bit harder on the big market teams, and I'm sorry. That's just kind of the fact of life. We always sit there. We watch CTE, ESPN. They just sit there and just talk about the big market teams constantly. All they do is just regurgitate the same nonsense over and over and over again. And yeah, here in the area where we're from, we have that thing. We call it the Cardinal Way. We haven't really seen that in a while, but we'll talk about that some other time. But as a small market team, a lot of times there's a lot of pride out there, and I don't want these big market teams to think that I'm picking on them in particular. I'm sorry, you guys. You have great economies, great owners. You got all this money. You got all these things going for you. You got CT, ESPN, and every other sports writer just glazing you, if I can use a term from the modern generation, just glazing your brains out in front of all of us. It gets a little old. So I'll just preface going forward everything with that. It's nothing personal.
Well, it looks like 3 of your 4 teams, if things keep going this way, 3 of your 4 teams in the championship series might all be big market teams, and that's exactly what the MLB wants, probably. And that's what's sad about it. That's what's sad about it. But one thing that we started on our last show that I'm going to continue to do moving forward is kind of a fun fact. I'm going to throw it at Marty and Jordan real quick, see if they can guess it without looking it up. We've talked nothing about this before the show started. Fellas, how many players in the MLB this season had 100% on a stolen base margin? And can you name the most surprising player on that list?
Oh my God.
Like I said, it was 100%. And it was not just one stolen base and they went 1 for 1 on it. It was double-digit stolen bases for all of these guys.
Wow. Boy, oh boy. That's a tough one, Collin.
I'll give you the answer because I'm more anxious to see if you guys could we could sit here for hours.
Hold on here for a second. Is this an extremely big name player?
Well, the answer for how many is there's 6 on the list. And there is probably I would say 3 of the 6 on there are big name players. One, Marty, is your boy Lawrence Butler from the Oakland Athletics.
No way. Really?
18 stolen bases, 100% on it. 18 attempts, 18 steals. Another one I'll give you because I just can't wait to get to this last name. Aaron Judge, so he's a massive name on this list, went 10 for 10. Brandon Nimmo went 15 for 15. Zach McKinstry, 16 for 16. Kyle Tucker, 11 for 11. And there's a Cardinals player on this list.
Can I guess him?
11 for 11. Yeah,
Paul Goldschmidt.
Yeah, I would guess Paul Goldschmidt did. No way.
Paul Goldschmidt went 11 for 11 on stolen bases this season with 100% steal percentage. Never in a million years would I ever thought we would talk about that here.
Wow.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about that. Last game, I think the last game I watched was against the Rockies, and they actually talked about it a little bit, and I just couldn't think if he had a double digits. I know he never got caught this year, but I didn't know if he had over 10.
I about fell over when I saw that.
If you watch his stolen bases, though, they won't even throw down to him. They won't even attempt it because he gets such a big secondary and a big read on it. And he just takes
we used to always talk about that. Hell, when they traded for Paul Goldschmidt, we talked about how this is a guy that steals bases, and it goes really under the radar because nobody talks about it. And he has Albert Pujols like base running skills. I mean, they're very smart. They get a read on the pitcher. They get a read on the catcher. They see if they're being lackadaisical. They get a big secondary, and they're gone, man. It's just first move, they're out the door. So, yeah, credit to Paul Goldschmidt and the other 5 guys on that list. That was the fun fact I wanted to bring to you guys this episode.
I like that one. I like that one a lot because we can talk about there's always your base stealers that are super flashy and they're super fast, and you're waiting for them. You almost know when they're going to do it. You're waiting for them to steal bags, and then you have those base runners that are just so smart. They pay such close attention. And we've seen, you could go back in time and list off hundreds of players that were just so good at that, where they could understand, especially you used to see this a lot with the Japanese pitchers when they'd first come into the league. If there was a language barrier, you would see people, they would really sit there and they would watch closely, and your smart base runners would just steal their asses off. And I love watching that. That's a fun one, Collin. I'm glad you came up with that one. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to send you guys off here. Remember that this is just one podcast in an entire network, and that is the Deep Threat Sports Network Opposite Field Podcast. Please follow us on our socials. On X, that is DT_sports_. YouTube, that is Deep Threat Sports. Spotify, that is Deep Threat Sports. Facebook, that is Deep Threat Sports Network. Instagram, that is Deep Threat Sports with a Z at the end, not an S. And TikTok, that is Deep Threat Sports Network. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Hey, until next time, fellas. Peace.